Hello and welcome back. So recently my sister-in-law approached me to build her a $550 gaming PC. This is her first gaming PC and I wanted to be as special as possible by getting her the most performance for her dollar. So in order to help her budget out a little bit, I did donate this Corsair Air 240 to her so we could spend a little bit more on some other prices. All in, we spent $556.36. And what did we get for that? Well, we got an AMD Ryzen 5 2400G, 16 gigabytes of Corsair RAM at 3000 megahertz, this Samsung 860 EVO M.2 SSD with 250 gigabytes, and also a Gigabyte AB350 MDS3H motherboard with all sorts of features that supports the M.2 drive and also 3000 megahertz RAM, and of course an EVGA 650 watt power supply. So I kind of go over why I picked some of these components, starting with this EVGA power supply. Originally I was going to get a 500 watt or a 600 watt EVGA white power supply. However, I was a little concerned about the 12 volt rail because both of those didn't deliver exactly 600 or 550 watts or whatever it was respectively. This power supply in particular delivers 648 watts to the 12 volt rail for a graphics card. So in the future, when she's ready to get an actual graphics card, she can get something like a 1070 Ti, a 1080, or even a 1080 Ti, because those graphics cards require 500 watts and 600 watts respectively at peak performance. So this thing is great for future-proofing, and everything here that you'll see will support those cards as best as possible. So without any further waiting, let's go ahead and get this thing built. Alright, so the reason why I chose this Gigabyte motherboard was really because it was pretty cheap and had a lot of features. It was only $64, I believe. So I think this has already been opened too, especially considering that there seems to be some sort of tape here, but that should be okay. Inside we have SATA cables, which we are gonna need for this build, and the motherboard itself. So unfortunately, for her first gaming PC, she won't have the luxury of unboxing it, but at least she'll get an idea of what it was like. So this is actually a pretty nice board. It's got two PCI x16 slots and 8 times here, and it's got 4 slots for RAM, 4 SATA ports if we need, an M.2 drive, M key or B, yeah, M key. And then for rear I/O, we have 2 USB 2.0, PS2, DVI, HDMI out, 4 USB 3.0, 2 more USB 2.0, and 1 gigabit Ethernet, as well as 3 audio ports, which she probably isn't going to need because the HDMI out is pretty much all this build is going to need until she gets a graphics card at a later time. So this is my first time opening our Ryzen box. I have to do this opening with you guys because I've never done it before. And so we have the Ryzen CPU, Ryzen 5 2400G, and an included sticker, which she may or may not want on the front of her case. I guess we'll find out. And included with this is the CPU cooler. So let's crack this open. All right, wow, this thing is tiny. It's much smaller than I thought it would be. Very cool. It even already has a thermal paste, so I guess we'll save on that. Might put my own on there, not sure. I guess we'll see what happens. I'm just gonna go ahead and stick this back inside the box until we need it. And let's go ahead and get the CPU installed. So installing CPU should be pretty straightforward. We have to be very careful not to damage any of these pins on the underside. If they do get bent, we can bend them back into place. And most importantly, we need to line up this triangle with the triangle found here on the motherboard. And we're just gonna simply unlock this first. And then we're gonna drop it in, so just slides right on in. And we're gonna close the locking mechanism, and the CPU is installed. That sure is pretty. Next, we're gonna wanna install the Samsung 860 EVO SSD into the M.2 slot. It should slide right on in and stick up a little bit, and then we're simply just gonna tighten down this screw here ever so gently, and it is ready to go. So I decided to upgrade to 16 gigabytes of RAM because we know that the Ryzen APU will actually use some of the system RAM for the graphics processing unit on board. And this is kind of critical because for multitasking, the more RAM you have, the better off you're going to be in the long run. So I wanted to try and help her out as much as possible from the get-go so she doesn't have to worry about upgrading the RAM later, and she should have plenty of system RAM for Windows, Google Chrome, system processes, and gaming all at the same time. Now, in order to install the heatsink that comes with the APU, I have to remove these 4 screws here and these 2 plastic brackets. Once these are removed, I can go ahead and put on the heatsink itself. So I do want the AMD logo to be facing upright, but unfortunately the way this thing mounts does not allow me to do that, so I'm going to have to mount it where AMD logo is facing the opposite direction, but at least it is in line with the Corsair logos in the rear. Now I'm just tightening some of the screws on each of the corners first, not all the way down, just enough to get the heatsink to make contact, and then I'll finish off the other screws on each corner until it's tightened far enough down on each side. Alright, so let's go ahead and get this Air 240 out of its case, or out of its box. Alright, and this is the case that she will be using for this particular build. You guys have may seen this before in a lot of other videos and such. This is absolutely a gorgeous case, one that I truly have always liked. It's got a nice window right here, and pretty much in front USB 2.0 somewhere right there, I think. Power reset, pretty much everything you need. And it's an M-ATX case, which is perfect for an M-ATX board. So we are very quickly nearing completion. We just need to install the I/O shield first before we put in the motherboard. That's good to go. And now we just need to drop in the motherboard itself. So this should be a pretty easy, nice fit, as these things are made to be together forever. For some reason, I am not doing this well. There we go. That's better. Nice and snug. So let's get this thing screwed down and installed, and we will be pretty close to being done. So now we're just gonna go around and install some of these, or screw in some of these standoffs, or screws into the standoffs, like so. And this thing will be nice and snug. So apparently this only comes with one system fan header here, and it's a PWM, fortunately, and I don't see any other places to plug fans in except for the CPU itself. So that kind of sucks, but luckily I have these awesome Noctua extension cables, so I'll be able to extend PWM to pretty much wherever I want in the case, and also a fan splitter. So this will be able to split PWM to 3 fans. Hopefully it supplies enough power so all 3 fans function normally. So normally this case comes with gray fans, non-LED, non-RGB, but now we'll be giving you 3 white LED fans to give yourself some more of that gamer feel for your new system. All right, so real quick, let's take a look at this power supply from EVGA. I always like EVGA power supplies. It's a brand I trust, and that is why I picked this out, because I don't want to buy something for someone when I wouldn't buy that same thing for myself, especially when it comes to computer components, if that makes any sense at all. Okay, so I've got everything pretty well cable managed. I am going to leave this cable here kind of loose and hanging about, because this will actually go to a graphics card in the future, whether it be a 1060, a 1070, 1070 Ti, or a 1080, or even a 1080 Ti. This is the only cable I think you'll need. Actually, maybe not for the 1080 Ti or for the 1080, but if that's the case, there are more cables that look exactly like this. They should be labeled PCIe, and you'll just plug that into the PCIe port on the actual power supply itself, and you can have more power if you need. But for now, I'm just going to leave this one because you definitely will need that when you do get a graphics card in the future. So that's going to stay tucked right there. So like I mentioned earlier, we were over budget by $6.36, and the reason for that was because of tax. And I forgot to calculate tax when building this thing, so I ended up having to drop out a 1 terabyte hard drive and just leaving in this 250 gigabyte SSD. Now I know that I could have got 1 terabyte of storage for about $44, and that would have been perfect for a great build, but I wanted this one to feel pretty snappy. And although her Steam library isn't that big yet, or probably doesn't even exist at all, but if it does, it's probably not very big. So 250 gigabytes should be good to go. However, that kind of made me feel a little bad because I really felt like she needed that extra space. So I'm gonna throw in two 1 terabyte Western Digital black drives. And I'm gonna put these in a RAID 0 so it'll look like 2 terabytes and it'll be pretty quick, but not as quick as the SSD, and so it'll have tons and tons of space. Now, because this will be in a RAID 0, do not put anything that you're not afraid to lose on these drives. Because if you do, and the RAID 0 fails for whatever reason, it's totally gone. But unlike your Steam repository, you can always re-download all the games that you've ever purchased from Steam, and they could go back on the hard drives. And even the same thing with games like Overwatch or StarCraft 2 or Minecraft, whatever you might be into. When you install them on these drives, it's fine because you can always re-download it. So that means your Windows operating system is going to go onto your NVMe SSD, and then all your personal documents and things of that nature will also go on there. So everything will feel very quick. And then when you're ready to play Steam games, it'll launch from the RAID 0 array that I'm going to create on here, and they'll be a little bit faster than just, like this, or just on OneDrive, like it would have been on the WD Blue that I originally had intended to buy. So yeah, she doesn't know this yet, but when I think she'll see this video first, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, surprise, 2 1 terabyte hard drives and a RAID 0 just for you. So I'm gonna get these installed, and then we'll be pretty much good to go to test this thing out to see if it even boots up, because I didn't do a power test before putting everything in here, but that's probably okay. I have pretty good luck most of the time. So we're gonna get these drives installed, and then it's gonna be time to install an operating system, well, test boot, and then install an operating system. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So in this particular case, the 3.5-inch drives all live in the back here. So I'll be putting your 1 terabyte hard drives inside of these sleds right about here. Oh wait, I'm putting them backwards. So go in about like that, and they just slide right on in. That's the first one, and then the second one. All right, cool. So if you ever need to remove those in the future, they'll be right here and ready to go. Done. All right, let's take one last quick look before I go get this thing powered on and for our first test boot. So I did the best I could with cable management. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of place to hide these cables, and these giant USB 3.0 things are always in the way, but I think everything else turned out pretty clean overall. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. All right, let's go get this thing test booted. All right, let's boot this puppy up for the first time. Oh, yeah. Helps if you actually give it power. And let's go. Okay, so we're just gonna go in the BIOS first and make sure everything is set up correctly before we try and install an operating system on it. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that it is actually, in fact, seeing the M.2 drive that's in here. And also I want to go ahead and configure the RAID 0 since I'm already being here anyway. And I just got to figure out how to do it. I've never used a Gigabyte BIOS like this before, so this is all new to me. But I won't show you guys the boring stuff. I will get right into figuring this out on my own. Okay, so we just got done installing Windows, and it's about to boot up into Windows 10 right now. So as soon as that's done, we're going to install some new drivers for everything, the APU, the motherboard, you name it. Everything's getting a driver update. We'll do some benchmarking probably to see where we're at, and then we'll do some overclocking to see where we can end up before we are pretty much done with this thing. Updates. So after getting all the Windows updates last night done, we went from 1703 to 1803, and there's been some weird glitch entered into the equation here, and I'm pretty sure it's with Windows. So what's happening is that all colors have a very blue hint or tint to it, or things like orange, reds are just straight up blue now, and you see this a lot with lighting and with fire. So I don't like the way that is, so I'm actually going to reinstall 1703, revert everything back, get all the drivers updated again, and then get my overclock going. But luckily I was able to kind of discover about where the overclock needs to be, and it looks like about 1600 megahertz is the perfect place for stability. So I'm going to show you guys what the blue tinting looks like on Windows 1803, just so you get an idea, and then I'm going to do the reinstall of 1703. So let's take a look. So I wasn't really able to replicate it in Tomb Raider, but you can see here all of the fire has this really blue tint to it, or is straight up blue itself. Even some of these flags that aren't supposed to be blue are blue. So you see this mainly with reds, oranges, and other colors. And this is definitely a problem because, one, this isn't my computer, so not something I can deal with in the future, but like everything is just off. All the colors are off, and I don't like the way it looks. So when I give this computer to my sister-in-law, I don't want it to be in this condition. Hopefully they have a fix by the time she does get it, or get the computer. But until then, we're going to revert back to 1703, and that should clear up all these issues that we're seeing here, and it'll be good enough for gaming when she's ready. Okay, so we've just reinstalled Windows 1703, got driver updates where necessary, and now we're about to run the benchmark again, but this time we should see that the fire is now in fact the right colors, and there's not all that blue tinting we were seeing earlier. So that's really interesting that Windows 1803 does this. So now I'm just going to go through all the benchmarks again with our overclocks that I have set and hope that everything's stable. And I think we'll be pretty much done with this build. I benchmarked all of the games at the 1080p preset medium settings, turning off tessellation, making sure VSync was off, and FXAA only was on. I didn't touch any other settings in Shadows of Mordor, Rise of the Tomb Raider, or Metro Last Light for any of the tests, aside from those that were mentioned. I was really surprised with the FPS gain after overclocking the GPU. Giving the GPU a 1600 MHz boost and upping the voltage to 1.2 allowed Shadows of Mordor to hit 39.81 FPS on average, Rise of Tomb Raider hit 32.08 FPS on average, and Metro Last Light getting 27.75 FPS on average. And again, all three of these games at 1080p medium settings. That's pretty awesome for an APU. Alright, so I think we're done with this build. I've reverted back to Windows 1703. All the colors look good. I've deferred the Windows updates for at least 30 days, or as best as I could in some other cases. So that way, when you do get this computer, hopefully they resolve some of the driver issues or graphics issues that we were seeing, and then you don't have that problem. And, well, I guess I'm pretty much done. I'm pretty happy with the build overall. Things turned out a lot better than I expected, especially for being a enthusiast level gamer, but I'm pretty impressed with the APU overall, and I would say it's a great entry-level gaming computer for anyone that's looking to game on a very, very serious budget. Again, this was at $550, and we did cheat a little bit because she did get a case for free and did also get some hard drives for free. But then again, I'm pretty sure some of you out there that shop deals more often could probably get just the same deal and also get a case included, and you could actually get a cheaper power supply, saving some more money if you guys need it. So there's room to work in that $550 budget. Definitely possible, definitely do. And so, I really hope you enjoy this new gaming computer of yours. Don't forget to get a graphics card when you can finally afford it later down the road. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.